In this tutorial, we will cover how to design any pilot guide, whether using Blue Sky Bio drills or any other pilot drill. The first section will cover Blue Sky Bio pilot drills. Notice in the upper right that we're in normal mode, and this is fine for what we'll be doing for this first section. Begin by opening the implant list. Now this panel can be found under the panel's icon on the toolbar, or you can simply double-click on an implant and this will serve as a shortcut to open the implant list panel. The implant list panel opens on the right side. In the implant list panel, on the implant line, click to toggle on the drill guide tube in order to make it visible. The brown cylinder is now visible over the implant in all the views. The green structure above the cylinder is the drill stop post, which will stop the handpiece at the correct drill depth. In the drill kit, left-click and select Blue Sky Bio Pilot Kit. The software automatically creates the hole in the surgical guide to exactly fit the guide tube that will be used for our pilot guide. In order to see the parts that the software selected, from the panel's icon, left-click and click on Parts Panel. Parts Panel displays pilot drill, the T22, in this case short, S for short, and also the metal cylinder that would be using tube 3-23-5L. And that's all there is to it. You would now go on to define the surgical guide limits and create the surgical guide. In this next section, we'll discuss how to design a pilot guide using non-Blue Sky Bio drills. Let's begin by double-clicking on the implant in order to open up the implant list panel on the right side of the screen. When customizing, we will need to go to the Advanced mode by clicking on the mode selection and switching to Advanced. Notice how the panel changes in order to include the guide tube section, which is what we'll be using to customize the guide hole for this example. In the implant list drill kit drop-down, click, then click on Custom Kit. Left-click in the drill guide checkbox to make the drill tube visible. We will now focus on the guide tube parameters, namely the guide hole diameter, the height, and the offset. Let's take a moment just to define each of these items. The guide hole diameter is the hole made in the surgical guide to accommodate the guide tube. In the software, height is the measurement of the brown cylinder as seen from the side. The offset in the software is defined as the distance between the occlusal portion of the implant to the top of the surgical guide, as represented by the top of the brown cylinder. In order to know what guide tube should be used, first determine the diameter of the drill you're going to be using. Let's say that the drill you're using is a 2.0 pilot. To select the guide tube, go to blueskyplan.com. Click on Components, click on Metal Cylinders, then click on All Guide Tubes. We said we'll be using a 2.0 drill, so we add 1/10 of a millimeter, and we'll be looking for a guide tube with an inner diameter of 2.1. An ID of 2.1 can be found on at least 4 guide tubes. We'll pick the second one here on our list, tube 3-21-5L, for our example. This slide illustrates the parameters used and their definitions. So in using tube 3-21-5L, which by the way is nothing more than the actual dimensions. 3 is the outer diameter, 2.1 or 21 is the inner diameter, 5 is the total height of the guide tube, L means it has a lip. So the guide hole diameter, as we'll see, will be the outer diameter plus 1/10 of a millimeter, so we will put 3.1 in the guide hole diameter. The next parameter that we'll be interested in setting is the height. The height on the website is the total height of the guide tube, including the lip. The software is only interested in the portion of the guide tube that goes into the brown cylinder, not including the lip at this point. So in this example, we'll be doing 5-1, which will be 4 millimeters for the height. The reason for this is that we want the portion of the metal sleeve to bottom out at the same point as the brown cylinder. This way we know if the brown cylinder is not hitting the soft tissue, that means the metal sleeve will not as well, and thereby ensuring a better fit with no wobbling of the surgical guide. We now come to the offset. We mentioned before that the offset is the distance between the top of the implant to the top of the surgical guide platform, which is where the brown cylinder ends. We also see that the lip sits above. The offset is equal to the drill length minus the implant length minus the lip. In this case, the equation would be offset is equal to the drill length minus the implant length minus 1, as that is the height of the lip. For our example, let's say we're using a 21 millimeter drill and a 10 millimeter implant. So the equation would be the offset would equal 21 minus 10 minus 1, which would equal 10. We'll set the offset to 10, and we'll notice how the guide tube will move higher away from the implant. So to recap, when making a custom pilot guide, switch to advanced mode. Take the diameter of the drill and add 1/10 of a millimeter. On our website, select a guide tube with the inner diameter equal to the drill diameter plus 1/10 of a millimeter. Take the outer diameter of this tube, add 1/10 of a millimeter, and type that value into the guide hole field. Take the height of the guide tube as provided on our website and subtract the lip. Type this value in the height field. The offset is the drill length minus the implant length minus the lip. Type this value in the offset field. Now you would be ready to proceed with creating the surgical guide.